Hello YouTube, this is Dazzathecameraman. Today is Saturday, July 29th, 2017. That's New Zealand time, of course. The rest of the world, for most of the world, it is still Friday, July 28th. Time zones are always a problem, and it is just gone 10 a.m. here this morning in New Zealand, Saturday morning, and it's a terrible time for a hangout. And I was hoping to have Larry from Shadow and Substance join me. Unfortunately, Larry has had to cancel, which is a great shame, but we will still discuss some of his work making the eclipse predictions, and we'll have a general chat. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat, so if you have any questions, I'll do my best to try and respond. And later on, I hope to follow up with another hangout in 2.5 hours time from now with Chris T and Eric, the astrophysicist. So Chris is an astronomer and Eric is an astronomer. He is an astrophysicist, as I understand. So hopefully they will be joining me at just after 12 p.m. New Zealand time, which is 00:30 UTC. So that's in 2.5 hours. So they'll be joining me then, and hopefully we can have a good chat about the upcoming eclipse, brown dwarfs next to the sun, and all that sort of thing. So welcome along. I see we've got a few people in the chat there, so thank you for joining me. And so as mentioned, on August 21st next month, we've got this total solar eclipse, which is going to be visible across the United States. Now, I'll just share my other screen there so everybody can see it. Just bear with me for a minute. Okay, so this is the website of Shadow and Substance, which is created by the guest that I hope to have on, Larry Cohn. So Larry produces these predictions and very good animations for upcoming eclipses, solar and lunar eclipses. And I thought that this was a very good point, that these predictions are made well ahead of time, decades, even longer. I was hoping to ask Larry about the time frame for predictions. I believe, in fact, thinking about going onto the NASA website, that the predictions can be made even hundreds of years ahead. That the timings are so very accurate, especially for dates. Maybe not so much for, you know, down to seconds, but the timings are very accurate, and we can know when an eclipse is going to fall, and also we know where the path of that eclipse, if it's a solar eclipse, is going to be. So for example, with this eclipse for next month, and let's just scroll down on Larry's website, Shadow and Substance, we can see these animations that Larry has produced, and of course there are other animations that other people have produced, and we can see the path of the totality of that solar eclipse as the shadow crosses the United States. And you can see in each position around the United States there, Larry has animated the amount of eclipse that they're going to see from each location. Obviously through this red path, it's going to be a total solar eclipse, and either side of that path, it's going to be partial. It's going to be closer to a total eclipse the closer that you get to that red line. So this means that we would have to be able to calculate these eclipses very accurately to produce accurate animations like this. You can see down the bottom here, we've got a timeline, and the predictions are made so that if you're at any location, you can find out exactly when the eclipse is going to start, when you see the edge of the moon passing in front of the sun, when it first makes contact, when totality occurs, and also when the eclipse finishes. Now, a couple of very important points. There's two things that we can take out of this. One is this whole Nibiru Planet X thing, and the other thing is about flat Earth. Well, let's cover the first one. If there was a brown dwarf or Nibiru Planet X within our solar system, and particularly near the Sun, as claimed by Nibiru Planet X, The Awakening, Nibiru News, Scott, and his physicist, as she likes to be called, Dr. Claudia Albers, well, that would throw all of these timings off, because the orbits of the planets would be perturbed. A brown dwarf would also affect the location of the Sun, because in fact, even the larger planets actually pull on the Sun. We all sort of imagine that the Sun is right at the center of the solar system and doesn't move from there, with all of the planets orbiting around it. But in fact, the larger planets pull on the Sun, and the Sun actually does a little bit of a wobble around the center of the solar system. So the Sun is actually not fixed right at the center of the solar system as we sort of imagine. And a brown dwarf next to the Sun would have a major effect on the position of the Sun. So timings such as solar eclipses and lunar eclipses and so on would be thrown out. And the second point, of course, is how do these predictions work for flat Earth? Because they can't even provide a working simulator like you can with astronomy software, such as Starry Night or Stellarium or any other of the many different types of astronomy simulations. I think the most sophisticated animation that I've seen for flat Earth is the GIF image with the Sun and the Moon chasing each other around the sky 180 degrees apart. So, you know, it begs the question of, whenever there's a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, how is it possible to make such accurate predictions when the flat earthers don't even really understand how eclipses work? You know, some of them will put forward different ideas about what causes eclipses, and some of those ideas are pretty bizarre. But let's face it, with the globe model and the working simulations that we have, the working models that we have, we can accurately predict eclipses and other events years ahead of time, which no flat earther can do, of course. So with that rather lengthy introduction, I'm going to turn to the chat and look at the comments, and just bear with me while I catch up and see what's there. Now, I think Sean mentioned, yes, he says, if memory serves, Dazza, the eclipse predictions are written in a book back in the mid-70s. It predicts this to the second every eclipse for the next 500 years. Well, that would be interesting, and I was hoping to have Larry actually touch on some of that, about how far back these predictions can be calculated. That would have been very interesting, but maybe Larry can join me another time, hopefully. Yes, it is kind of hard to argue with that kind of accuracy, Anthony. Good point. Yes, we do miss so much in the Southern Hemisphere, Bodie McBoatface. Like this awesome event and the meteor shower occurring now. Well, I remember we did have an almost total solar eclipse back in, I think it was 2012. I was involved in live streaming our feed from the observatory through to SLU. And as I recall, I think it was about 87% total as seen from here in Tauranga, New Zealand. Up in Northern Australia, they had a total solar eclipse. I've never seen a total solar eclipse myself. It would be something to behold. But even seeing that almost total solar eclipse in 2012 was something quite special. I also remember that we had the transit of Venus, which is another interesting point. You know, predictions for things like transits of planets. Now, when I say a transit, I'm talking about one of the inner planets, that would be Mercury or Venus, passing over in front of the sun. So it's actually between the sun and the Earth. And we see the silhouette of the planet Mercury or the planet Venus crossing over in front of the sun. And these predictions can be made years ahead of time, centuries ahead of time, and we can predict them with accuracy. And again, if there was a brown dwarf in the middle of our solar system, then all of that would be completely thrown off. And in fact, we wouldn't even be having this conversation now. I'm just looking through the chat again, so just bear with me. By the way, it's a lovely day here in New Zealand. The sun is shining, which is very nice because we've had a number of days of heavy rain. So it's good to see the sun out again. And I've actually got the solar telescope from the observatory with me. So I'm hoping to break that out later today, now that we've got some sunshine. That's a Lunt Solar 60 telescope. So it's actually dedicated for looking at the sun, unlike when you're using a beta solar filter or some other similar device. You can actually see a lot of the detail, the sort of texture of the surface of the sun. And you can also see the filaments and flares as they're coming off the sun. Of course, it looks like it's in super slow motion because of the scale of the sun being so large, but it's quite amazing to see that sort of detail through a solar telescope. So I'm also hoping to hook up a camera feed to that at some time. I thought that would be quite good to have a live look at the sun. So I'll see what I can do about trying to hook that up at some time. Of course, the sun is very quiet at the moment as far as sunspots go. So unfortunately, there's not a lot to see on the sun unless there's a large filament around the edge that we can see. But yeah, it would be quite good even just being able to see the sort of surface texture of the sun that we don't see using beta solar filters. So it's good to see so many people joining the chat, especially at this time of the day for many people. Approximately 50% of my viewers are in the United States. And I think it's just coming up 6 p.m. in Florida and New York and areas along that side of the States. Of course, it's a little bit earlier on the West Coast. Are there any particular questions that anybody wants to ask me in the chat? If you want to ask me a question in particular, can you please put Dazzathecameraman so that it lights up an orange for me? That'll make it easier for me to see that it's a question. Now, we have had a lot of rain here in New Zealand in recent weeks, and we're seeing the same thing all around the world. We're also seeing increased temperatures, heat waves, wildfires, and so on. And I do believe that we're seeing the results of climate change. I've touched on this in recent Hangouts. And, you know, one of the results of the increased heat is increased evaporation. So you've got water evaporating, it's going up into the atmosphere, and of course it's going to come down. It's going to come down as rain. So we're getting extra rainfall, we're getting extra flooding, we're getting extra landslips. Now, let me be very clear. This has nothing at all to do with a brown dwarf or Nibiru Planet X in our solar system. Now, I may do a hangout about this at some stage, but looking at the climate data, of course, we can see the levels of CO2 going up and up and up year after year. And this is affecting our climate. And it is very important that we put the brakes on the pollution that we're creating. And I do believe that we're seeing the results of climate change, and no doubt there are some cycles that occur, but I think we also have to remember that we're pumping out all of this pollution into the atmosphere, and the more that we pump out, you know, it's got to have an effect on the weather. Okay, Jared asks, how far do you think this climate change is going to progress? Even more extreme or what? Yes, I do believe it is going to progress, and unfortunately, I think it is going to get worse. I think we're just sort of starting to see the real effects of climate change. As everybody knows, I hate fear-mongering, but I also believe it's important to be honest. And we are seeing increased weather events. We are seeing increased flooding and landslips and so on. So I think it's important to be sensible about what we're seeing, and, you know, consider things such as, you know, where you live, where you work, that sort of thing. And for example, you probably wouldn't want to be living in an area that is prone to flooding or an area that's prone to landslips. Back in 2005, I was right on the edge of a major landslip. In fact, we had to evacuate the house for 24 hours. We had a major rainfall event back in 2005 here in New Zealand. And there were landslips all over the place, and I was right on the edge of one of them. I lived on a hillside, and a huge chunk of the hill fell away, and the landslip was only, I think, if I remember correctly, it was about 4 meters from my front door. And we didn't know if there was going to be more slips that night, so we had to evacuate for the night. And there was some major rebuilding or reclaiming of the hillside that had to be carried out. But that was quite a major event. There were several houses lost. In fact, there were 3 houses directly below my house that were destroyed in front of me. I actually watched them being swept off their foundations as the hillside came down. There was a small slip that occurred first of all, and I went down below to see if the people in the houses down below were okay. Fortunately, those houses were vacant at the time. Everybody was out at work and so on. And then a major slip came down and actually took those houses off their foundations. So it was quite a day. Now, that was back in 2005, which of course is 12 years ago. That was a sort of fairly rare event back then, but just in the last, I guess, 6 months especially, we've been seeing a lot of these sort of events all around the world. There's been a lot of extreme flooding and so on. But as I say, I want to be very clear that this has got nothing to do with any Nibiru, Planet X, brown dwarf, or anything like that. If anyone wants to claim that there's a brown dwarf in the solar system, please provide me with the right ascension and declination coordinates, and I and my other astronomy colleagues can turn our telescopes to those coordinates and try and get some images. Now, of course, I'm saying that because I know that it doesn't exist, because nobody has been able to provide these coordinates, because it doesn't exist. I see that there was another question further up. How much of a shadow will the eclipse cast on the flat Earth? Well, good question. I guess the shadow is going to be the same across the United States, whether the United States is on a globe Earth or a flat Earth. And interestingly, the simulation that we see here on shadow and substance is going to be accurate whether you believe that you live on a flat Earth or a globe Earth. Let's just scroll down there as well and see the other animations that Larry has here. So this is for Illinois, where the greatest or maximum duration of darkness will occur. This is at shadowandsubstance.com. So if you want to check that out, it's all one word, shadowandsubstance.com. And Larry has some links there, so you can click on the different states, and there we go. There's a list there that you can check on whatever state that you might be living in, and check out. Let's have a look at Kansas, for example. You've got timings and everything here, percentage and so on. So this just goes to show how accurate these predictions can be made. So hopefully we'll be able to get Larry on sometime and we can discuss the calculations that he uses and, you know, how long the predictions go for and all that sort of thing. So it's all very interesting stuff. Anonymous asks, do you believe this eclipse will be the moon simulator passing in front of the sun simulator? Well, hey, I guess I've got it all figured out. So we've got the sun simulator and the moon simulator causing the eclipse simulator on the flat earth simulator. Hey, maybe we're all living in a simulation. That's what some people say, isn't it? I guess that would explain a lot, wouldn't it? Hey, maybe I'm not really having this hangout. Maybe I just think I'm having this hangout. Oh God, I'm getting paranoid again. It's all good fun though, isn't it? And Stephen James asks, how come we can predict eclipses accurately when the Earth is flat and we don't even know the continents are arranged? Well, it's a very good question. If the Earth is flat and we don't even know how the continents are arranged, how can we predict these eclipses and who's going to see what from their different location? Oh, it's all a conspiracy, of course. It's the powers that be, because they have all this hidden knowledge, and you know, the Illuminati sort of reveal to the sheeple what they need to know, so it all makes sense, you see. So I guess that's how it works. That's how the paranoid thinking works on that one. Now, we've seen some very interesting videos from Nibiru Planet X, The Awakening, and his so-called physicist recently, supposedly showing brown dwarfs next to the sun. They've been roundly debunked by a number of us truthers, debunkers, including Jerry Bell and Robert Lockwood and Astronomy Live and myself and others. Of course, the 3 brown dwarfs that Scott had been pointing out are in fact spots on the image sensor on the Hanniday Space Telescope. And when you look at those images, those so-called brown dwarfs never move one bit. So, you know, a bit of a problem there. It seems, according to the physicists, these brown dwarfs defy the laws of gravity, which is very interesting. She seems to be living in her own little world there. I see we've got Robert Lockwood in the chat. Hi, Robert. You've been putting out some great videos there. And good to see that work that you've been doing. So keep up the good work. Thank you, Robert. Have I caught the lunar wave yet? No, I haven't, not personally, but I have posted a number of videos in the past debunking Crow 777's lunar wave. And it was interesting that Astronomy Live was filming the moon one night, and I'd put forward my theory. I really believe that what we're seeing in the lunar wave is the result of passing warm and cold air masses causing a difference in refraction. And sometimes when you see the moon rising when it's low on the horizon, you can actually see this layering effect, which is refraction caused by the atmosphere. And of course, it's impossible to predict when there might be a passing warm and cold air mass which might cause this type of refraction. But aircraft can actually cause the same sort of effect. And looking at some videos on YouTube from people who film aircraft, plane spotters, I did find some videos that actually showed a lunar wave. And some of them were very clear. Some of them were even the double lunar wave, as we saw in Crow's videos. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that all of the so-called lunar waves in Crow's videos, let me have a glass of water here, losing my voice. Not suggesting that all of the lunar waves in Crow's videos were in fact caused by passing aircraft, but what I am saying is that we can clearly see that the effects of the aircraft have the same sort of effect that we see in Crow's videos. So going back to what I was saying about Astronomy Live, he was actually filming the moon one night, and he saw this wave go across the moon, and he looked up into the sky, and there was a plane flying right by the moon. So that was very interesting timing. Now, of course, when you're looking at the moon, you're looking at an area of sky of only half a degree across. So it's quite easy for an aircraft to fly quite close to the moon in the sky and not actually be seen in the field of view of the camera. You know, you don't necessarily have to expect to see a plane flying by to cause a so-called lunar wave, because it may be just outside the field of view. I see that there's a few more questions, so let me scroll up and check those out. Okay, so Stephen James says, I tried for the last 2 local ISS or International Space Station moon transits using the site you mentioned. Great website, but weather ruined both. Are you planning to try again, and what camera settings would you use? Yes, in fact, on Monday the 31st, my local time, there is another good transit of the International Space Station across the face of the sun, and I'm hoping to capture that one. So I will set up 2 cameras. I'll have my Nikon P900 filming, and I'll also use the Canon 60DA filming through the small, I've got a 90mm refractor, which is nice and portable, so I'll film through that as well. So I'll have the 2 cameras going. I could go down to the observatory and film through the 14-inch telescope, but really it's a bit pointless, because when you put the beta solar filter on the end of the telescope, the aperture in the beta filter is actually small anyway. It's probably equivalent to the 90mm refractor that I'm using anyway, as far as the aperture is concerned. So there would be no advantage in me using a larger telescope like the 14-inch or the 8-inch that we've got at the observatory. So the 90mm, what's that, about 3.5 inches, is nice and portable. So I'll be trying to use that. The camera settings, I will just basically use the auto settings and lock them in. It's the easiest way. Video, I will set the P900 to 60 frames per second, so I can try and get as many sharp frames as I can. And yeah, we'll see how we go with that, and hopefully the sky will be clear. We had another transit, what, about a week ago, and I had the same problem. It clouded over, so I missed that one. So far, I haven't been able to film a transit of the International Space Station crossing over in front of the moon. I'm hoping to do that at some stage, but every time I've had an opportunity, I've lucked out with the weather. Just remember, if you've got a question or a comment specifically for me, could you please type in Dazzathecameraman so that it lights up orange for me? Otherwise, I won't necessarily see your comment. Thank you, Stephen. I see your acknowledgement there. What I might do is I'll drag the chat over to the main window, and we can have a bit of a record of that as well. Let's see if I can pop that out. So there is the live chat. There we go. How's that? So you can see that if there's a question for me, it lights up in orange, which makes it easier for me to see your comments and questions. Will they chemtrail the skies on the eclipse? Yep, no doubt people will be saying that they will, because every time a chemtrail believer sees a contrail, they automatically say it's chemtrail. Apparently there are no such thing as contrails in the eyes of a chemtrail believer. So, you know, if there's, of course, there will be aircraft flying around and they will be leaving contrails, and people will be saying, oh, they're chemtrailing the sky. But people will have a clear view of the sky from some location across the US, and when the sky goes dark because the moon is in front of the sun, sorry, the moon is in front of the sun, then if there was a brown dwarf next to the sun, near the sun, or anywhere in the otherwise daytime sky, we should be able to see it because we've got the sun blocked out. Now remember that the sun is still shining behind the moon, so anything else in the sky, such as the planets, we've got Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, all visible to the naked eye, of course, and the only reason that we can see them is because of sunlight reflecting off the planet's surfaces. Same with the moon. Remember that there is only one light source in our solar system, and that is our sun. So I'm just going to scroll up and catch up on those tags. I'm good, thank you, Multi-Tom-Tom. Good to hear from you. I remember we did a hangout discussing flat Earth some time back. Requiem for a Dream. Oh man, it's Multi-Tom-Tom. Don't you still owe Dazzathecameraman a boot licking and a car wash still? Yeah, I never did get that boot licking, but I have to say Multi-Tom-Tom was very gracious in acknowledging that, yes, Dazza was right in that discussion. And got to give Multi-Tom-Tom credit too for fronting up for that hangout as well. So good on you for that, Multi-Tom-Tom. I invite many people to hangouts, and a lot of people never accept the offer. So just remember too, if you've joined in, if you didn't catch the start, I am also hoping to have another hangout at 0030 UTC. That will be in 2 hours from now with Chris and Eric. They're both astronomers. Eric is an astrophysicist, as I believe. So we will have an interesting hangout talking about the upcoming eclipse and brown dwarfs and things like that. Unfortunately, Larry was not able to join me. He had to cancel. So that's why we're not talking to Larry at the moment. Thank you, Bodhi. Yep, we must catch up. Let's do some flat Earth observations and some experiments. We've got the moon in the sky as well. If anybody's interested in doing a coordinated viewing of the moon across the planet, across the so-called flat Earth, I'd be quite keen to do that. We could take simulated viewings, like we could talk to each other on the phone or Skype or something like that, and maybe record ourselves as we're recording the moon. And we can check the angle of the moon in the sky, the altitude and azimuth from our locations, and compare that and see how the geometry works out. And yes, Twiggy and Anonymous, that is our Eric that we're talking about. So I'm hoping to catch up with our Eric, our physicist, in about 2 hours for a hangout. So there are all sorts of interesting experiments that can be done to test the flat Earth models. I have to say, it's been very interesting watching the videos by Soundly on YouTube. If you haven't seen Soundly's videos, please go and check them out. He has been kindly given a P900, Nikon P900 camera, by, well, I probably shouldn't say, I don't know if I should say that, but he's been given one. It was a very kind donation. And he has filmed the power pylon towers and also the long straight bridge that crosses Lake Pontchartrain. And we can clearly see that the Earth is curved by the curvature of the towers as they go over the horizon and the curvature of the bridge. And of course, the flat Earth believers are all in a flap, trying to come up with all sorts of excuses. Anthony Riley apparently tried to say that the curvature was caused by some sort of electrical soup caused by the power pylons. Well, I wonder how he explains why the bridge is obviously curved as well. Maybe the whole Lake Pontchartrain is filled with electrical soup somehow. Now, of course, normally when we look across a lake, we've really got no reference because we've got no actual markers in the water. But these power pylons are in a perfectly straight line, and you can clearly see them curving away over the horizon. In fact, let me just pull up Soundly's YouTube channel, and we'll take a quick look at his videos. Just bear with me while I pull that up. He's been getting some great results with his camera. So let me just pull that over into the screen share. And here are some of his videos. This is on Soundly's YouTube channel. And we can clearly see that curvature. I mean, look at that, all that lovely curvature there. And this one here, he does a blink test. So here, there's right at the end here, there's this really tall power pylon that's taller than all of the rest. And he's got an image there of the tower that is, well, a full view of the tower right down to the base. And he's overlaid that there. And so we can see where the base of that tower would be. And we can see that it is clearly obscured by the horizon. So these are the power pylon towers here. And this one here is actually of that long straight bridge that crosses Lake Pontchartrain. And again, we can see the curvature in that. So Soundly has done a lot of work with his P900. There's another great video there. And he's looking forward to clearer conditions. It's summertime, of course, in the Northern Hemisphere, or approaching, where are we? What's the date today? July? Yep. So we've just passed the summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. And of course, there's a lot of heat and haze and so on. So Soundly is hoping for better conditions to get even better results. But I have to say, I think that the results so far have been outstanding. So check those out on Soundly. And while you're over there, please remember to subscribe if you're not subscribed already. So back to the chat there. Just me, Dazza the cameraman. How come that Chris Potter testimony was not enough, even for believers? That should be an alarm. Not enough for what? I'm not sure exactly. You mean not enough to prove that Nibiru doesn't exist? Well, of course, there are a lot of diehard believers that will never believe that Nibiru doesn't exist, even though they can't provide the right ascension and declination coordinates, or even an accurate location in the sky. I'm just scrolling up here in my own chat window there to see if there are any other comments I need to catch up on. So if anybody's interested in doing a coordinated filming of the moon at some time, please drop me a line at dazzathecameraman@outlook.com. And while I'm thinking of that too, I should point out that with the comments underneath my videos, I do like to try and respond to as many people as possible. But unfortunately now I'm getting so many comments on my videos, it's not possible for me to reply to every comment. I was looking at the stats last night, and in the last 28 days, I think it was 6,100 comments have been left under my videos, approximately 40,000 views in that 28 days. And obviously with over 6,000 comments in 28 days, it's really impossible for me to reply to every comment, to see every comment, and to respond. A lot of people ask me to check this out and do that and to make a video and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, I can't do that for everybody. Otherwise, I would be here 24/7, 8 days a week, if you know what I mean. And I just can't do that. And I really don't have the energy for it as well, unfortunately. Anonymous says, Soundly's video clearly shows evidence of curvature. How much more evidence does a flat earther need? Indeed. In fact, I don't believe that Soundly's videos just show evidence of curvature. I believe it shows proof of curvature. And I'm sure that if these flat earth believers were actually down there on the ground at that location looking at what Soundly was seeing with his eyes and maybe taking a little telescope or binoculars along with them, they would have to agree that they were seeing curvature. But no doubt they would also claim that it was because of refraction or vanishing point or perspective, or any of the favorite keywords that they like to use and take out of context to try and make the impossible sound possible. Your eyes converge to a point in the center. Well, that's a vanishing point. No curve ever. Well, Truther Jones, maybe you can explain the curvature that we're seeing in Soundly's videos. It looks pretty curved to me, that's for sure. Electrolysis, yeah. I hope to head back down to Makatu sometime. That's a location down the coast where I filmed Mount Maunganui, which is a now extinct or dormant volcano very close to my location here in Tauranga. And from Makatu, the shoreline at Makatu, I could not see the shoreline at Mount Maunganui. In fact, I couldn't see the buildings along the coast at Mount Maunganui. But then I went up on the hill behind Makatu in the same line of sight. I was at an elevation of 200 feet, and I could even see the waves breaking on the beach at Mount Maunganui. Now, in some of those shots, there was the mirage effect, the reflection, and so what I want to do is to go back down there when the conditions are ideal. And today would have been a really good day, in fact. And film again when there is no mirage. We're in winter at the moment, so we haven't got so much heat haze. So it should be a good time to do some more filming when I can. So the distance between Makatu and Mount Maunganui is 18 miles. And what I see, the hidden amount matches the mathematic predictions for a curved globe Earth. Requiem for a Dream says, just remember 90% of all proclaimed flat earthers are just trolls trying to rile folks up to fulfill their sad, sorry, empty lives as they try to grow into tomorrow young men and women. Yes, I do believe that a lot of the flat earthers are just trolls having a bit of a laugh, but unfortunately they are sweeping along a number of people with them who actually look at what they're presenting and believe that it's true and that it seems to make sense. Because let's face it, if you go down to the beach and you look out at the horizon, you can't see any curvature, and nor should you, because with an eye height of 6 feet above sea level, the horizon is only 3 miles away. And to be able to see even 1 degree of curvature of the Earth, you would need to see 69 miles of horizon from left to right. And when you go down to the beach and you look at the horizon, which is only 3 miles away, you're only seeing a tiny fraction of that distance from left to right. And even if you could see 69 miles of horizon from left to right, 1 degree is not enough for you to be able to see the curvature. you would need to be able to see about 5 degrees of curvature to be able to clearly see a curve on the horizon. 1 degree is just too small for your eyes to perceive without having some sort of flat line reference point to compare it to. So is there anyone in the chat who's actually going to be able to view the total solar eclipse next month on August 21st? Are you going to be in the path of the solar eclipse? That would be something to see. Now, if you haven't already, you might want to go out and buy a suitable solar filter. You can order proper eclipse viewers online, or the other thing that you could do is to order some beta solar filter. In fact, beta even supplied the eclipse viewers anyway, so you could order those from beta or on Amazon or whatever. The other thing that you could do is to go down to the local hardware or engineering supplies store and order a dark welding lens. You would want at least a number 12. If you can get a higher than number 12, say a number 14 if possible. A 14 would be ideal for viewing the sun. Also, I believe that you could probably use the electronic welding helmets. If you've got access to one of those, it will automatically adjust for the brightness of the sun. I have had a bit of a play with one of those in the past and it seemed to work quite well. Obviously, you should never look at the sun directly. You will damage your eyes. A lot of people like to, well, not a lot of people, some people like to sun gaze, in other words, stare at the sun, and they think that that's a clever thing to do, but of course they're asking for trouble with their eyes, and you're going to burn or damage the sensitive, or the light sensitive cells in the back of your eye, and it's a great way to slowly go blind. Maybe not immediately, but it will certainly damage your vision. Now, I did see that somebody said, yes, there's a few people who are going to be in the line of totality for the solar eclipse. Guild 6290. And I did see somebody else. Yes, Safe Sanctuary. Yes, Dazza, I am in South Carolina. And Bragwin says, I've already got the glasses for watching the eclipse. So excited. Yeah, it would be awesome to see the total solar eclipse. And that moment of totality where you see the sun's corona around the edge. There's also an effect too called the diamond ring effect. That doesn't always occur. It depends how far away the moon is from the Earth. But sometimes you get this effect that looks just like a diamond ring with a gem on the ring. Just me, Dazzathecameraman. Why waste time on people looking at solar eclipse? I don't really understand that question. Stephen James, what's your opinion of some of the stuff filmed by the guys using night vision scopes, such as UFO Joe and others? Have you seen anything yet you thought was truly unexplainable? Well, that's a good question, and I have looked at a lot of those night vision videos, and I have some very good contacts, especially via Facebook, from some of the people who are making these videos, and I'll just take that down to the live chat there so people can follow that. Including Horse Farmer 1000 and others in Australia. Some of the earlier videos, I mean, these guys are pretty onto it now. They've learned to recognize what they're looking at. But some of the earlier videos, I used to see things like birds and bugs and aircraft and so on. I personally haven't seen anything that I couldn't explain. Several years ago, I did see something that I couldn't explain on the night. You know, I've talked about this before. I was seeing a visitor off outside, just about to leave. The sky was dark, and whenever I go outside, I always tend to look up at the sky, whether it's day or night. And I looked up and I saw this very strange sight like I'd never seen before. It looked like cars driving around inside the clouds. It looked like headlights, car headlights on inside the clouds, all driving around, going this way and that. They seemed to be inside the clouds. And my visitor and I looked at these lights, and I just had no idea what I was looking at. I could not explain it. So the next day I phoned the local air traffic control at the local airport and explained that I was an amateur astronomer and you know, that I'd seen these lights. You know, I wasn't some sort of nutter or whatever, but just trying to work out what I was seeing. It turned out that the night before there had been an event on at the local air museum, Classic Flyers, and as part of that event they were using the old wartime air raid spotlights, and they were shining those around. Well, from my location, I was actually looking across the harbour to where the airport is, and from their location where they were shining these spotlights around, they were on the other side of the clouds that were between us. So in other words, they were shining these spotlights up onto the backs of the clouds that I was seeing. So it looked like these lights were actually inside the clouds. Now, I don't think that that was some sort of pat explanation that I was given. It made perfect sense to me of what I was seeing, and you know, the event was genuine. That was being held at the Air Museum, so I have no reason to doubt that explanation. So apart from that, no, I've never seen anything that I couldn't explain eventually. And of course, as an amateur astronomer, I've spent many hours over many years looking at the sky. I've never seen anything that I would say is an alien spacecraft or whatever. And note that I didn't say UFO, because a UFO by definition is an unidentified flying object. Now, just because something is unidentified doesn't mean that it's an alien spacecraft or something like that. Now, people used to report seeing these huge flying triangles and things like that, strange craft that nobody had ever seen before. And then, of course, the stealth bomber was unveiled, and it looked completely different to any sort of other aircraft that we'd seen before. And of course, they would have to fly these things, test fly them, and they'd be flying from one location to another, or secret missions or whatever, and people would see them, and they'd look up and see these strange looking craft that nobody had ever seen before. And so what do you call that? It's an unidentified flying object by the truest sense of the definition. So no, I've never seen any alien spacecraft or anything like that. So I'm just going to scroll through the comments again. Now, I'm probably going to wind this up soon so I can go and have a rest, because we're going to have another hangout in an hour and a half. If you come back, we'll be talking to Chris and Scott, Scott T, both of whom are astronomers. And so you won't just have to listen to me babbling on. And it should be quite an interesting conversation. So I'm going to go and have a rest very soon and get some lunch before that as well. And that will be at 00:30 UTC, which will be approximately 90 minutes from now. Okay, Just Me asks, Dazzathecameraman, can we tell once and for all that Dr. Claudia is false? I think I can say categorically yes, because anybody that is claiming that spots on a camera image sensor are brown dwarfs next to the sun clearly doesn't know what they're talking about. We can prove, and we have proven, that they are spots on the image sensor. And basic astronomy proves that brown dwarfs near our sun would be catastrophic to our solar system. I would not be having this hangout right now. It would not be possible for me to be having this hangout right now if there were brown dwarfs next to the solar system, because all of the planets would be pulled out of their orbits, and I believe life on Earth would probably cease to exist already if there were brown dwarfs near the sun. It's not something that just sort of would happen overnight. And of course, the point of this hangout too was to discuss the upcoming eclipse, solar eclipse on August 21st. And my point being is that if there are brown dwarfs within our solar system and certainly near the sun, then the August 21st solar eclipse should not occur as predicted. And we've got these highly accurate timings of the eclipse from sites such as Shadow and Substance here, giving the timings, what it would look like, the amount of totality, what you're going to see from the different states, and so forth. And all of this would be impossible if there were brown dwarfs within our solar system, because all of these timings would be thrown out. And remember that these predictions were made even decades, maybe even hundreds of years before. I seem to recall something about predictions being made about 400 years ago. And there's some pretty clever astronomers who worked some stuff out. And but anyway, hopefully we'll be able to get Larry back at some stage and talk about that, or maybe even Chris and Eric, who will be joining me in 90 minutes, can give me further insight onto that. Okay, I'm going to wind this up now. So thank you for joining me, everybody. I'm going to go and have a rest, and hopefully we'll see you back here in 90 minutes time. It will be probably a better time for most for a hangout. I know that this earlier hangout really didn't suit a lot of people. So I'll try and aim for better hangout times in future so that more people can join. So thank you for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you back in an hour and a half at 0030 UTC. This is Dazzathecameraman. Thank you.